Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to do a video on a subject that I've wanted to make this video for quite a while now, but I wasn't sure in my own brain what I wanted to do with it and how I wanted to change it, because I believe one of the special rules in Black Powder needs a root and branch rethink, I think it would be fair to say. And, I mean, there's no point in me burying the lead because the clue's in the title. So today we will be looking at how to fix L'Order Mixte. There you go. It even rhymes. What a good idea it is. So before we can get into my problems with it and my potential fixes, first of all, I think it seems behooven to us to look at what L'Order Mixte is. Now, L'Order Mixte was a tactic that was used quite extensively by the French, particularly in the mid-war period. So it's not something that you would see in the Republican armies, and you would see it less and less as the quality of the army fell off. But when the army was at its peak, was talking 1805 through to probably 1812, and maybe the invasion of Russia itself, you would see L'Order Mixte. Now, normally the pictures on the screen are of only passing resemblance to the video, but if you look at the screen now, you'll see that I have deployed my French regiment in L'Order Mixte. Now, I should say that this was a tactic, a formation that was used by the French. And as you can see on the screen, it consists of 2 battalions in column, and then in between them, a battalion in line. And the idea here is, think like a castle wall. You've got 2 towers on each end. You've got a tower on each end of the wall, and that's to protect the weak wall. And there it is. So you've only got men, in this case 2 deep, but in reality a 3 deep line, which could be quite easily punched through by particularly enemy cavalry. Now, the point of having those strong points there is to protect the flanks of the line. And the idea of having the line is that you can maximize the firepower that you're putting into the enemy. Now, the thing is with a column, although it does take up quite a large amount of real estate, frontage-wise is not so much. So you may end up fighting perhaps 1.5, maybe 2 battalions of infantry. You've got your battalion in line, you're trading fire, you cause, some casualties. But then the French have still got those 2 columns to be their shock reserve, which when they consider that the enemy are wavering or maybe, have suffered sufficient casualties, the columns can then go in. So it's both an aggressive formation and a defensive formation, which is why it was used so widely. So that sounds pretty useful, and indeed it was. But let's have a look at the rules that are given for it in Black Powder. Now, these are rules that are in Albion Triumphant and Clash of Eagles. And as I always say about these things, it's these rules that provide the flavour for Black Powder. These are the rules that give you the jam in the rice pudding, as I often say. So having a look at the Clash of Eagles. Now, I tend to use Clash of Eagles because that was the latest supplement. So that's the one that's the most up-to-date, as it were. And in Clash of Eagles, I can only really find a very brief representation of it on page 195. And that's actually shown with some Russian grenadiers, including some Pavlovskis, which is always good fun. Now, what are the rules for L'Order Mixte? Well, going back to Albion Triumphant, we can see that the main rule really is that it negates the must form square special rule, and it also means that infantry don't suffer the negatives for being contacted by cavalry. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, if you'll excuse the cavalry-related pun there, and that is because, although you don't suffer the negatives for being in combat with cavalry, if you form square, you also don't suffer the negatives for being in combat with cavalry because you're not in combat with cavalry. Now, the infantry don't really want to be in that position because they can shoot and the cavalry can't. So being locked into combat with cavalry, usually not particularly great for the infantry. Now, that said, you can still form square if you want to. That is a legitimate charge reaction. But if you're going to do that, you're kind of negating the point of being in L'Order Mixte in the first place. Now, it is not being forced into square that big a deal. Now, I am criticising this formation, the rules for it, so you would think that I would be on the camp of saying, well, who cares if you get formed into square? Well, actually, no, I'm not going to follow that line. If I'm honest, I think being formed into square or being forced into square by cavalry is really it's a vital role for the enemy cavalry on the tabletop. I remember the Great Game up in Edinburgh, which is where there were 100+ players refighting the Battle of Waterloo. I remember around about sort of tea time on the first day going round and seeing that the centre was completely devoid of enemy infantry. So I was the French. So the centre was completely clear of British infantry. I thought, oh, this is going to be sick. We're going to punch through. We are on the right-hand side of Hougomont. La Haye-Saint. So, yeah, no, this is going to be fine. We're going to absolutely clear the ridge, and it's all going to be gravy. I went back at lunchtime the next day, expecting to see our troops up on the ridge, and lo, I did see that still in front of La Haye-Saint were a load of squares. It was actually the Young Guard. And they'd all been forced into square because the enemy had rushed in reserve cavalry and forced the French into square. Had those units been in order mixed, then that wouldn't have happened and the advance could have continued. But I'm not going to be too critical of the generals in charge of that sector of the battlefield because there are very solid reasons for not doing order mixed. So yes, not having your infantry units forced into square can be absolutely game-changing, can be a game winner. So it is useful from that regard. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the concept behind the rule is useless. What I'm saying is the way that it is worded in the rules makes it suboptimal, let's put it that way. And I can hear people out there saying, well, who cares if it's suboptimal? If that's the formation that they use, I'm going to do that anyway. And yes, while I've got some sympathy with it's historical, so I'm going to do it that way, people in the audience, and I think there's a lot of merit in that, they didn't do it that way because it was fun or because it was, oh yeah, that's what Frederick the Great used to do or whatever. They did it because it was the most efficient way of organising their units and manoeuvring them on the battlefield. It should be that in the rules, and it's not. So that is a problem with the rules. And having only talked about positives so far, let's get into some of the problems with this rule. So I hinted at one earlier on, and that is that it actually allows cavalry to contact your infantry unit, which is something that can't happen if they're in square. That's maybe a rule that I would look at as well, but, as it currently stands, if you are in square, you can't be contacted by cavalry. Now, it may be that the cavalry, for argument's sake, well, let's have a look at an example here. So we've got some British heavy dragoons. So they've moved in, they've charged the unit that's in line. Now, the units in line they don't have to form square from their charge reaction, so they can pick any of the others. They've chosen to stand and fire. Now, they're firing 3 shots. They're hitting on 3 pluses because they're at point-blank range. And they've got a 4 and a 6. So luckily, they have disordered the enemy cavalry charge. So that's that's about as good a result as you can get without shaking the enemy unit straight away. So they've taken 2. They roll their saves. They take 1 casualty, but they are disordered. So we get into the combat. Now the French are hitting on 4. So they've got 6 attacks. So they get 3 hits. And they're a little bit unlucky. Their opponent saves 2. 1 of them goes through. So that unit is now shaken. Sorry, no, it's not. No, it's taken 2 casualties, not quite yet shaken. Now the British attack back. Now they are heavy dragoons, so they have 8 dice. They should be hitting on 3s because they charge, but because they're disordered, they're now hitting on 4s. So they get 4 hits. They are re-rolling their misses due to their special rule, so they end up with 6 hits. And the French player now manages to save 3 of those. He's saving on a 4+. So he saves 3. He is now shaken. So he is taking the test. In spite of, well, let's see who's won the combat. So the French inflicted 1 casualty. They're supported on 2 sides. So that gives them 3. The British inflicted 3 casualties, and they are heavy cavalry. So they get a bonus 1 or 2 for that. So the British have won that. Even if they'd drawn, then the French are shaken, so they still need to make the test. Even if that unit stands, it's now shaken. It can't advance towards the enemy. It's effectively, for the time being at least, out of the game. Let's compare that to the British cavalry declare a charge. The French decide to form square. The British cavalry come up to 3 inches away and then have to charge someone else. That unit is now completely unmolested and can carry on next turn as normal, assuming that the British are out of charge range, which they probably won't be, but at least they can fire 1 shot at the British next turn and maybe cause some casualties that way. Certainly a lot better than them having to take a test, perhaps fall back, perhaps even be destroyed. Now, if they are destroyed, they are supported to each flank, so those units are also testing as well. Now, they're only going to break on a 4 or less on 2 dice, which is not that likely, but it is a 1 in 6 chance. So if you've got 2 units, that then becomes a 1 in 3 chance that one of them is going to break. So that's not great odds. If you had formed square with that unit that was in line, then there is 0 chance of them breaking because there's no combat fought. So I threw quite a lot of numbers at you there, but the too long didn't read, or I'm not very good at maths version of that, which I'm certainly not either. But the version of that is that basically you're better to not be engaged at all than not suffer the disadvantages when you are engaged. That's basically what it comes down to. So that's how useful it is against cavalry. As I say, its main role is to be against cavalry, so that's fair enough. However, it is also an aggressive tactic as well. French armies were not known for being passive. Certainly in the early and mid-war, they would be very aggressive. So this is a formation that lets you advance quickly on the enemy. You've got 2 units in column, and that gives them +2 to their command value. Now, this is another main problem with it, is in order to move the formation together, you have to issue a brigade order. And that will impact the 2 units that are in column and the unit that's in line. Now, this is an interesting thing, and it's something that I was thinking about when writing the FAQ for Under Eagles to Glory. More on that in a short while. But the question then becomes, what is the command value of the general issuing the order? So what do I mean by that? Well, if he's trying to take strategy rating 7, well, if he gets to add 1 to his strategy rating when ordering units in column, and he gets to order 2 when ordering French units in column. That's the pas de charge special rule. So he effectively becomes strategy rating 9 for those 2 units in column, and 7 for the unit that's in line. Now, a big problem with that is if he rolls a 3 or a 4, doesn't really matter, that's great. If he rolls a 9, 8, 7, or even maybe a 6, then there's going to be big problems there. And the reason for that is because the strategy rating for the columns is so much higher that they're going to move much faster than the line. And the whole point is that you have to keep the formation together. So for argument's sake, if you were to say, right, I'm going to move forward with this regiment here, I'm going to roll the dice, and I roll a 9. Well, suddenly the 2 columns, they get to move once, and the line doesn't get to move at all. If I roll a 7, then the columns get to move twice, and the line only gets to move once. So unless you're very clear with your orders, such as the order mixed regiment will move forward 1 move, then you could be in a huge amount of trouble when your units start spreading out, and suddenly you lose the cohesion that you've got order mixed, and instead of having that strong 2 columns with a line in the middle, you've got some odd columns dotted about and some units in line running to catch up. So that's a huge problem. Now, what we need to do to change that rule is to have that as a regimental or a brigade formation. So you are giving orders to the whole thing at once there. Now, I would say that getting +2 for the pas de charge would be too much because you do have that unit in line. I would say getting no benefit at all is a bit silly because otherwise you're best off ordering them to move in column and then form line. And do that every turn seems a little bit silly. So I would give a unit +1 to their command rating if they are in order mixed. So you've got your 2 columns and you've got the line in the centre. You all get +1 and you move together as a single organic unit. Now, I don't want to criticise Warlord too much for the way they've got the rules at the moment, and that is because, as I suggested earlier on in the video, as the war went on and troops were becoming less experienced, then, the skills and the training that are required for the order mixed weren't quite in place. So one of the big things that you need, it's a little bit like modern, preparing a modern defensive position. You don't shoot at the people who are attacking you. You shoot across the front of the person next to you, and they shoot across your front. So you have to have absolute confidence that the unit to your left and right are going to be shooting the guys who are attacking you. It's not easy to to have that amount of confidence. Unless you're very well trained, it's something of a head mess, because you want to make sure that you're okay, but that's not what it's about. If you start doing that, then you're withdrawing the support from the people to your left or your right, so the whole line's going to collapse. So it's a little bit like that, in that you have to trust the people next to you to look after your protection. It's a bit of a head mess, that one. And that's why units that are more veteran, or at least more well trained, would be better at doing that, because they would have gone through the simulations or the battles in which that has happened. That builds confidence that their neighbours are going to look after them. Now, as I mentioned, the photograph in the Clash of Eagles shows a Russian formation in Lord of Mixte. Now, it wouldn't work particularly well with the Russians because of their special rules that don't let them issue brigade orders, so it wouldn't be a great idea. But I mean, as an illustration, it's not too bad. I would say the same about the Austrians as well. I am not aware of any other nations using Lord of Mixte. Perhaps those that were French adjacent might have done, so Warsaw or Italy, something like that. But as far as Württemberg, perhaps. But as far as I'm concerned, I've not read about other nations using Lord of Mixte. If they did, then please let me know down in the comments below. Now, that's it for today's video. It's a bit of a niche one. It's a bit of a sort of formation niche within a niche. I felt after last week, I think perhaps myself and certainly you guys could do with a nice short one after the epic journey that was the life of General Rajewski. Now, speaking of people who would march under Eagles to glory, what an absolutely fantastic link that was. I am proud to announce that the Under Eagles to Glory 2, the re-glorioning, that final part is still pending, has been penned in, and it is going to happen on the 1st and 2nd of March 2025, and that's still in Boards and Swords in Derby. It's a fantastic location, really good price support. Ian's a top bloke, and he's very, very supportive of the Napoleonic hobby. The pack is not out yet. The pack's going to be out this week along with the tickets. So just make sure that you bookmark Boards and Swords and head over there when the tickets are released. I'll probably put up a Facebook post to say that the tickets have been released. But that is, as I say, on the 1st and 2nd of March 2025, which gives you just under 6 months to get your armies painted and ready, which those of you who didn't come to the first one will think, aha, 6 months, that's loads of time. Those of you who did come to the last event were telling me that 6 months is surprisingly not enough time. So make sure, if you fancy coming to that you get started on collecting and painting your army now. Now, painting isn't mandatory, but the awards are for best painted. So if you want to be in with a chance of winning those, then get those brushes working. Now, one thing that I am also interested in, no one ever listens to the end of these videos, but if you are still here, let me know in the comments down below. I'm thinking towards the end of next year, so around about this time next year, I'm just scrolling through my calendar to see that it'll probably be either the 6th or 7th or the 27th, 28th of September. I'm thinking of doing another event, but this one would be epic scale. So when I say epic scale, that's sort of what it's aimed at, but it'll be from 10 mil to 15 mil, as long as it's based on the same base sizes as Warlord Epic. So let me know if that's something that you will be interested in. If it is, then I'll go ahead and do it. If I don't get much, if I don't get many people saying they'd be interested, then I won't do it. As simple as that. There's no point in putting in the time and effort for stuff that people aren't interested in, and I don't mean that in a sort of woe is me way. It's just I'd rather know up front before I spend all this time trying to do something that's just not going to be that popular. So that's the plan for next year. Now, I'm warning you in advance, there will be a video next weekend. There will not be a video the weekend after that. I am on best man duties. It's our stag do, but sort of a stag do. It's actually the team event for Lord of the Rings that we're going to, and one of the team that's going to that is he's getting married next month. So there won't be any video on the 29th of September, and the actual wedding itself takes place on Halloween, which is a Thursday, weirdly, but there won't be any on the first week of November either, because I'll still be down in Essex, and it's also my birthday weekend that weekend as well, so I will be away doing birthday stuff. So that is just a quick look ahead, so just to warn you off, no video on the 29th, and no video on the 3rd of November. To let you know as well, I intend on doing the Wednesday live streams as long as we have British summertime, so that's to the end of October. But it may change after that. I've got a couple of other plans to do, but we'll see if they come off or not. I might have October off and then work out something in November, December time. I don't know yet, but we'll come back to that. But I just want to say thank you very much for listening. That was a bit of waffle at the end there, a bit of channel updates, really, I guess. Thank you so much. If you've not checked out the video on General Rajewski, please do. It was 3 years in the making, and I'm very, very proud of it. I think it's probably the best one we've had so far, with the possible exception of Muhammad Ali Pasha. I'm particularly proud of that one as well. So if you've not watched that one, go and check that one out. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.